All right, so here we are today. Chris Oliver from Go Rails and James Jelinek from Shaky Code. We're getting together today to talk about scopes and some custom scopes. So this is going to be fun. This is our first time pairing live on screen. So, look for
Yeah.
any typos and excuse us.
Yep. It's gonna be fun. Cool.
Cool.
Uh,
So,
yeah. Where do you want to start?
yeah, so basically, like, my idea was I wanted to scope objects based off of a date time object. So for instance, like if we create a new blog, I want to be able to scope like blog posts that were posted during certain days. Like for instance, like on business days, I want to also scope something that's within a payroll period. And I know this is kind of odd. I mean, we're using a blog for a payroll period, so it doesn't really match up. So maybe we can generate a scaffold, just a simple Rails app, and have
Yeah.
some sort of object like I don't know, like clock events or something like that, or we'll call it timekeeper because that was something I was working on recently.
Cool. Let's do that.
Cool. So we're running the app. We're going to run bundle, and we should be good to go. And for those of you out there who are new to this, creating this will spin up SQLite, and you won't need to do anything else. It'll pretty much just work.
Cool. What models do we need?
Let's just do a single model. So what do we call that model? Let's just call it a clock event.
You want to just do like event generic?
Yeah, yeah, event. Simple is
Cool.
better.
Okay. What do we need? Or do we want to just use like the created at timestamp, or do we want to add another field for that?
Um, I mean, we can scope off of created at, but if we ever want to expand this, we might want to have like like a clocked in date time field or a clocked out date time field, something like that. I think that might be cool.
Okay. We'll do that. All right. Cool.
Cool, awesome. So let's
Guess it would have made more sense to generate a scaffold, so we would have had all the views for these.
actually,
But
yeah. I mean, we can always wipe this if you want to do that.
yeah,
It'd make it easier.
let's do a scaffold. I wonder if there's a way to.
Override the
I
model. I think
I think
actually.
this will work fine. Actually,
Okay.
I think it will generate the exact same files.
Yeah,
Uh,
there's a possibility it might overwrite or have duplicate migrations,
yep,
but
that worked perfect. And we've already run rig db migrate, so we can just run the server and
and there we go. Welcome aboard. Hey, we're riding on Rails. We've never seen this before.
and I believe the events page should be set up. Yep, perfect.
Cool. So we'll need to go in our views.
I'm just gonna
Oh,
set this so it's.
oh yeah, good idea. Because that welcome page is going to get annoying.
Yep, cool.
Cool. All right. So let's go in our views, and we want to be able to like add and edit stuff. So let's check our views and just make sure like everything there is kosher, like in the form.
Okay.
All right. So we have class field, date, time, select. Okay, cool. The scaffold already does it, so we don't really have to do anything. So
Yep.
cool. Let's
Yep.
uh let's add some funny clock events.
Cool. We'll just do one like for a few hours. We'll do another one. How many do you want to make?
Just a few.
Just like 4 or 5.
Right.
These are going to be long ones.
Yeah, and no, that's okay because we can scope for that too.
I'll just leave that one. Cool. Okay.
All right, so we have some objects now here in our app, which is awesome. But let's say in our view, we want to iterate over each one, um, and we want to scope them. So we're going to need to write some current or some custom scopes here. And I came up with the idea based off of some stuff I was writing before, kind of scoping off of like current month, current week, uh, business days, which is going to be a little bit tricky, but I think together we can pull this off. And then scope a payroll week. So a payroll week would be like a 13-day run for an average business. So it start on like Monday and then finish up 13 days from then on a Sunday. So
Mm-hmm.
those are the four scopes that I'd like to work on. So I think together we can probably knock this out pretty easy.
Cool. Let's write those down. So in a scope for
Current month,
current month,
then current week,
current week,
business days, and then payroll week.
okay.
All right.
Uh,
So now,
yeah.
oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so we'll just end up, these are just the regular Rails scopes. We haven't defined, like, they all require a lambda here.
Right.
Um, so we can just paste those in. They won't do anything special right now, but on to you.
Okay. So for current month, we're gonna want to actually look at let's say the clock in time. So I already forget what that field is. So we're clocked in.
Is within the current month.
Right. So we're
Right.
so we're basically gonna have to do some SQL, probably do some SQL here,
Yeah.
unless you have a better idea.
Yeah, and the reason why we have to write SQL and we can't use regular old Active Record is because we're looking at the month. But I guess also technically we're looking at the year too, because
Right.
you have to specify that. So, yeah, you have to make sure that you specify both the year and the month, which is important because otherwise, if you just did the month, then you would get that same month throughout all of history. Um, and that wouldn't be exactly the current month.
Right. And there's a couple different ways you can do this using the time class or the date class. I've written something like this before, but I think we're going to try to go for best practices and what makes sense.
Yeah.
So, okay, so the next thing that we'll need to do is we'll have to do where clocked in, and we'll do a question mark.
Like equals question mark? Or
Yeah.
actually, I was thinking of the, like, isn't there like the extract, like, year from clocked in or something? Have you ever done that
Uh,
before?
no, I actually never done that. I've usually just done like the equals question mark and then passed some SQL to it.
Yeah.
Um,
Like one way you could do that, actually, you could skip all of this, because basically, if you say like date dot today dot beginning of month dot date dot today dot end of month, this would create an array of dates over the whole entire month, and it would
okay.
look to see where the clocked in was within that date, which is interesting. Like that's definitely one approach to it, but
Yeah.
it like factors in the day of the month, which is kind of irrelevant.
Right.
Um, and you can kind of like get rid of that because you shouldn't need it for the query. And also, this is like pretty long.
Yeah. It is kind of long, but I mean it actually works. I didn't really think about doing it that way,
Yeah,
but
because we should be
I
able
like
to
that.
say current month, and you'll see that this will just look for the clocked in date being between the 1st of July and the last of July.
Right.
So that technically works, um, and it's actually pretty awesome for how simple it is. So
Yeah,
yeah,
maybe we can go with this. I was actually going to do like old school sequel where,
yeah.
you know,
Let's
where you
let's
do
see
clock.
it.
Yeah. So, let's see. I'm flipping between your screen. I'm sorry. I already
All
took some
good.
notes here. So let's see.
Yeah, because I think there's like about 4 or 5 different ways you could do this reasonably well, and there's lots of different approaches that you could do. Because I maybe even have another one in mind that we could
Right.
do.
So what I was thinking is doing this here is so where clocked in between question mark and question mark, comma, and then we can do time dot zone dot now dot beginning of month, and then let's see. I need to scroll your page. Time dot zone dot now uh, end of and oops. Wish I could spell month. All right, and
Right.
I think I'm having syntax issues. Yep, I got
So,
syntax
missing
issues.
quote there. So
Yeah,
this
sorry.
actually generates the exact same query
Right.
as mine, using times. And generally, like times may be the better way to work instead of off of date.
Yeah.
Dates like okay because it doesn't really have to deal with time zones as much. But yeah, time.zone is what you probably always want to use when you're working with time zones. And if you use this two period syntax here, that will create a range. And it basically gets converted because Ruby will know what the range is.
Right.
That's like a built-in Ruby type, and this query in Active Record converts to almost this exact same thing. So if we were to change this to time.zone.now and did the same thing here, this would generate the exact same query, which is cool.
Okay.
So you can write like your snippet of SQL in
Right.
here that you're familiar with and do that. So it's actually really awesome because this is the like pure Ruby version and this is the mixture of SQL. And
Yeah.
I had another idea of doing something where it's like sort of both of these, where in SQL you can extract the like the month from a date. So like this is a little different between MySQL and Postgres. I think you may have to like always make sure you keep track of that, but you can extract all of these things from the day. So you could say um, extract month from clocked in, and then I think you can also do the year so that you would have both of these, and then you could have that equal to something, and
Okay.
then
You know,
if you
I'll interrupt you. Sorry to be rude, but
no,
like
go for it.
just looking at this, like what I wrote. I mean, what I wrote works, and what you wrote works. But I don't know, for some reason, like what you wrote with the Ruby range, like
Mm-hmm.
it's more readable and it makes more sense, and it's just I don't know. It just seems cleaner, and it does the exact same thing. So I think kind of like my scope should be like. Um, Kind of like the beginner's example, kind of like how to do it, quick and dirty. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that the method that you wrote the first time is probably the refined or refactored version. So I
Mm-hmm.
say we go ahead and commit your version because it's cleaner,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
pure Ruby, and we're using AR. So
Yep. And like this approach, you can have it basically like you can use all of the stuff. Like if you're actually good with SQL, you can do all of these things and make it even potentially even more efficient than this. So like these are actually like doing calculations to figure out what the beginning of the month is and all of that. And here you could basically do the same thing with the year, and then you would just pass in like time.zone.now.month and time.zone.now.year.
Mhm.
And this would probably, depending on how SQL is built, like if these extracts are slow, which they probably are,
Yeah.
unless you index on that, then like this wouldn't be the most ideal query, but it will probably be sort of like what we have to do for like business days, for example, where you like have to like find out if the day is Saturday or Sunday.
Right.
Um, so it's like heading in sort of that direction.
Okay.
But
So
yeah,
let's keep that up just so when we move to the next scope,
and
that's
comment
fine.
comment
Yeah.
those out.
So let's do current week. And current week is really, I mean, I wish we could make this more dry and use one scope, but we can't. So it's basically we're going to take Chris's method from current month, and we're just going to do beginning of week and end of week.
Yep, and those are just these end of weeks and beginning of week methods. Same with month. They come from active support in Rails, so they're like I don't believe that they're normally in Ruby itself, but they're just
No,
useful helpers for that.
yeah,
And so that
and you,
makes these two really really easy.
yeah, and you could, and I think you're right. I don't think it's like inherited from the distinct date or time class. I think those are active support Rails helpers.
Yep, I almost sure they are.
Yeah, we,
Beginning
yeah, we could probably
of
Google it,
week.
and one of us is going to be right.
Active support.
Yep.
Yep.
All right. Yep. Winner, winner, chicken dinner.
Yep. It's been around for a long time, it looks like.
Sweet. Well,
Cool.
again, guys and girls out there, that's the magic of Rails. You don't need to know too much Ruby, but it helps if you do know Ruby. But Rails gives you a lot of magical helpers and methods that just makes your life easier.
Mm-hmm.
So I think out of all these scopes, the hardest one for us to tackle is going to be the business days. So do you want to like try to skip ahead to the payroll week and figure that out?
Sure, let's do it.
All right. So
Cool. So the payroll week is you give it like a starting date, or
right.
is that going to be based off of like today?
Um, it's gonna that's actually a good question. Um, Technically, so today is what is today? Today is Wednesday. So let's just say that the beginning of my payroll period is this Monday. So a payroll period lasts 13 days. It's a 13-day run, Monday through the following, I guess, Saturday. Is
Mm-hmm.
that 13 days? Yeah, I think that's 13
So
days.
yeah, so we could just do sort of like I mean, we could start this with like let's assume that today is the beginning, and then we can move the that around so that we can like pull that variable out like the starting day so that you could pass in that so that
Okay.
like because it's not going to be every Monday that's the beginning of a payroll week.
Right.
It's like every other Monday. So
Right. So
let's
that's something that we would have to pass in via the controller or the view.
yeah. So we can actually start really simple and just like use like time.zone.now and consider today as like the beginning and then add 13 days to it. And then
Right.
once we've got that working, we can step backwards and like go into like changing that starting day so that it's customizable for which payroll week you're looking at.
Okay. Cool. So yeah, let's do that.
So you've got your clocked in, and really this is just going to be pretty similar to where things were before, where you've got like we can do like beginning of day if we want to like and these you could do you probably also want that in there too like this will take it to like midnight if you really are working with times like it's kind of good to keep that in mind
Hey,
um,
you know what? I just had an epiphany.
what's that
We, uh, my syntax might be off, but let me play with this for a second.
Cool.
So time.zone.now, beginning of week. Inherently in Rails in the helper beginning of week, it's going to start on what, a Sunday or a Monday?
It defaults to Monday, but that's configurable.
Okay,
So,
okay, but let's just say Monday is cool with me, and my payroll
mhm,
week starts on a Monday. So like we already have our Monday right here, if you think about it. So
right,
we don't need to do beginning of day.
right. And actually, I think these like internally do beginning of day because technically the beginning of the week is the first day of the week and the very first like second of that. And we can check that out here. So we could do like time.zone.now, which is the current time. And if you do like beginning of day, that sets it to, midnight. And then if you do beginning of week, it should be, yeah, it automatically does the like internal beginning of day for you, which is cool. So yeah,
Right.
this actually does do that. You just have to make sure that in Rails you've set like the beginning of week to Monday.
Right.
And that's like a
Right.
really good use case for Monday being beginning of week. Even though we're from the US and like technically Sunday is like the most accepted thing. For work, it's not really.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and that's kind of the interesting thing about business logic. You know, doesn't always match the calendar. So I mean, there's a lot of times where we have to go beyond, normal Rails and Ruby conventions and make things work.
Yep.
Cool. All right. So payroll week. So we got, this is our Monday. So basically, what we want to do is scope out 13 days from now.
Mm-hmm. So really, you could do, and I'm actually going to pull this into a variable, and we'll make this like a longer block
Okay.
because we can just say uh, start equals that, and then we can have start to
I I like it. It's also going to make this more easier to read.
yeah, and here you can just do plus 13 days, and that would make an array that would or that would make a Ruby range that would range from the beginning of the week to the end of the 13 days from then. Actually, you may
But
also need to do
there,
like the end of
there's
day
also,
there.
yeah, there's also another way to do it. You could also do start dot 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 uh, time dot zone dot now end end of week plus like whatever the difference in days is. So you could do it that way too,
Yeah.
but I like this because it's cleaner.
Yeah, you could do that where you could say like let's say the start equals this and then start plus 13 days or you could do because one thing you're going to miss with plus 13 days is it's going to be the beginning of Sunday and you're not going to get the end
Oh,
of that day. So you would
so
actually
we'll
have to do end of day. But I like what you mentioned, which is like you could do start dot end of week plus 7 dot days and then you would get the same day. Um, so you
well
would
let's
go, you
let's
would
let's
like
roll
make
with
the
that.
full week, and then you would get the second week just by adding 7 days,
Yeah,
and that,
let's do that. Let's do this the start and yeah, exactly.
and this is one of those cases where like this is complicated enough of a scope, that you want to like do something like that, and you can't use the keyword end because that's a Ruby keyword, so you want to do
Right.
something like ending, and that makes it like pretty clean. It's like 3 lines, but at the end of the day, like if you tried to do all of this in line, that would be gnarly
Yeah.
and it would be hard to read.
Yeah, yeah, you'd have to have dual monitors just to read it. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We can already see these are long, and actually, if you look at these two, like, um, we because there's actually going to be like milliseconds or microseconds like between each of these time.zone.now calls. Like if
Hmm.
this is run in like if this is run at a really specific time, like 11:59 and 59 seconds, if there's a possibility that this one could be the previous month and this could actually be the next month, and then you would accidentally get 2 months worth of
Uh,
stuff. So there's like a really rare case that that could happen, and it actually makes a lot of sense to have your start pulled out to something like that, and then you just have your start end of month, and you have your start uh, in both cases, and then that way you've saved this variable so that any case that it might be like it's really rare for that to happen, and if you refresh the page, it would fix itself.
right.
Um, but it would be like there's potential for a bug there, which is really interesting that like you probably do want to pull this out and save it just to be
Yeah.
safe.
Yeah, boys and girls out there, we in the dev world call this an edge case. So
Yep, exactly.
so cool. So before we go to business days, why don't we go ahead and go to the console and test out our scopes and just see what we get?
Cool. I'm gonna clear this so it's easier to read. We should get current month. We get one item for that, and I believe that was right. Like I don't think we had any for any other ones for July, so that's good.
Right.
That is expected.
And then current week, we should get one.
Current week, we get that same one, and this is querying on the time as we expected. And you'll notice here that it's the 29th through the 5th. Um, and if you look at the calendar,
It should match
it
up.
should be the 29th is the Monday and the 5th is the Sunday. So we're doing
Yeah,
a business week like that. So that is correct.
cool.
And
And let's.
then payroll week, we
Oh
can
wait,
do.
hang on 1 second. We got some syntax errors. We there we go.
There we go.
Sweet.
An event payroll week.
Yep,
And
and
this
it gives
one
us.
will query between the 29th and the 12th. So if we open up that calendar again, we can make sure that that is correct. The 29th through the 12th. So it gets 2 full weeks. And you can also see here that it does the. So it also does 11:59:59, but also 0.999999.
Right.
In
So we're going
order
on.
to include just about every microsecond possible for
Yeah.
that day.
Luckily, we have atomic time on our side.
Yep. So yeah, that's good. I think all
Cool.
that looks correct.
So, all right, let's tackle the monster because this is like, when I was thinking about doing this Go Rails episode with you, like business days, I had been working on a Ruby gem myself to define this, and I kind of just got stuck with it. It turned into a really big spaghetti mess. So I really like your input on this, on like how you would scope business days, like
Yeah.
does it make sense to make it a scope, or does it make sense to actually build out like a complex method, in just as a class method itself? So what would you
So
suggest?
so did you have a and as a reminder to everybody, like the business week is just or business days are just Monday through Friday. So we're trying to ignore Saturday and Sundays. And that is kind of the heart of why it's so complicated because you have like these holistic ranges. Like we want to include everything in between these two dates in those cases, but in these cases, like if you want the month, so if you want all of the business days in a month, you should be able to join these two queries ideally, where you could get clocked in as anywhere between this, but then we ignore all of the ones on Saturdays and Sundays. And that's why it's so complicated because we have to like explicitly ignore certain types. Um, and my approach here, and I'm curious to hear what yours was, is basically to do So actually, does business days have a range at all, or do we want to just make it sort of global so you could chain current month with business days so you could get only the business days for the month or the
I think
week?
I think it would make sense to make it global so we could chain because I mean
I agree.
we're going to want to say like event dot current month dot business days. That's going to be important to us.
Mm-hmm. And basically, that locks you into pretty much like one solution, which is this like extract that I was talking about before. It didn't really make sense as much there. Like, it was fine that you could do that. And maybe it's slightly less Ruby calculation to pull it off. But um, it really makes the most sense here because if you're talking about like every single every single event, let's pull up the events again. If you're looking at all of these dates and you want to pull out every one that is within the business week, that's actually a hard sort of calculation to do.
Right. And
And I think my keyboard
we
died.
want to try to do this as easy as possible. So we don't want to go too crazy with this, but at the same time, this is kind of a monster of a problem to tackle.
I believe the keyboard died, so I may have to. Oh, is it back? I can't tell. All right, batteries might be low, but we'll power through this.
Nice.
Um, so yeah, in this case, like you can't do any real logic to pull this off. Like the only thing you can do is extract the day of the week. And that's why like the MySQL extract from time is going to be so important. Like that's really the only way to do this. And we can extract um, the. I wonder if we can pull out the day of week. Uh, and that might be even harder. So it might not be like a thing we can do just in SQL.
Right.
All right, do you know if there's a way to do that in
I'm
SQL?
I'm honestly not sure. I'm doing a little googling while you're researching too. So, I have another idea that's cooking, but just give me a second here.
Mm-hmm. Extracting day of week as an integer. I wonder DOW originally derived from Postgres. So maybe MySQL supports this. So let's try that. Day of week. Oh, here we go. I think we found something.
Hey, I thought about something. Like, what if, I mean, this would probably get turned into like Ruby soup, but what if we somehow specified like in an array what those business days were? Like if we said explicitly Monday through Friday,
Well, the trouble
somehow.
is the trouble is that you don't have a range to work within. If you knew that you were doing this for the current month, you could actually make this range, and then in Ruby, you could convert it to an array and delete all of the items on Saturdays and
Uh,
Sundays.
okay,
But
so
because
because
you're
we're in a scope,
basically because you're doing this for all of time, you're gonna have to convert this with some sort of code from the database. You can't pre-calculate the Monday through Friday stuff until it's in the like it has to be in the database. You can't pre-calculate it. You
yeah,
could, if you didn't do this, you could make a separate scope here that was like current month business days, and then you could take this and you could say like um, so here's your range, and then actually you would like, you know, delete if, and you would take each day, um, and then you would say like delete if the day dot Saturday or day dot Sunday. And this would go through that array and it would delete them out if it was a Saturday or Sunday, and then you'd have like it's nasty. Like it's gonna be like this weird giant array, and if you're to do this inside of SQL, it's gonna like it's going to make this huge query that's like, if clocked in is like, it's this, or it's this, or it's this, or it's this. And it's going to have an or clause for every single day that you pass in.
All right.
So that
So basically, what you're telling me that the Ruby gem that I'm writing, I probably really need to rethink that.
really you can do it with the raw sort of SQL syntax. So
Okay.
here is the day of week function that's built into SQL, at least MySQL. It looks like a DOW or like it's like an extract DOW or something like that in Postgres. This is like a special method for it. So you can get day of week, and then you know what day of the week it is. So it's like 7. So 7 is Saturday in this case. And this might also be different. I believe that other page that I looked at with Postgres is 0 is Sunday. So it's going to be
Okay.
really important that if you write this, that you know that it's running on Postgres or whatever. So you'll have to like maybe have an if statement in there to handle both. But this basically just means that we can say where day of week for clocked in equals whatever. And here we can just say the days of the week that we want. So we can do 2 through 6.
Yeah.
And that's all you have to do. So these should be, this should actually take care of it. And we can test it out in the console. So we'll reload and we can say event.business days. And
Oops.
that crashed. Syntax
Okay.
error. Oh, I'm missing.
Yeah.
Let's see. What are we missing? It's not. It's an in clause because we're passing in a range. So it is not. Let's close the terminal and clear this out. So event dot business days still didn't work. I'm not super good at just raw SQL syntax, but you can
Yeah.
take the day of the week from that column, and then you want to check for that value. So this would return like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or a 7, and you want to see if it's inside of this list. No such function this time, day of week, which is very interesting, and that is
Well,
because we're on SQLite.
yeah. So maybe there's a method for SQLite.
Yeah, so
So at least
this
we can work with
we're already dealing with this, and
edge case.
SQLite's different from MySQL, and yeah, they're all gonna be different. Day of
So I guess my advice, because I've only been doing this for a few years, and you've mentored me throughout the years, and one thing I've learned from you is try to find a standard and stick to it. So guys and girls out there, if you're working in Rails and Ruby, try to stick to a database engine that you like. I mean, you're going to hit projects that you're going to need to touch other things like NoSQL and Mongoid, but to try to get yourself familiar with at least one SQL engine or relational database and get comfortable with it, so you know the constraints and all the features and methods of that database. For me, I'm a Postgres guy, MySQL,
you should use
and
Postgres for sure.
yeah, yeah, Postgres rocks. Postgres is fast.
All right,
So
I'm gonna say let's not use SQLite for this because these don't look too promising.
okay,
Um, SQLite really doesn't have much functionality compared to everything else.
here go white light.
It's good for very simple things, but you're better off doing something with MySQL or Postgres. Postgres preferably, so we can open up our database YAML. And I always forget what the syntax is. We don't need test or production. And then we can do timekeeper dev. Adapter will be MySQL. Or is it MySQL 2? I can never remember.
I think it's MySQL too.
Okay, the gem is MySQL 2. I know that. We'll get rid of SQLite. Just add that at the top. And bundle. And I can't remember. I'll probably need a username here for the database. And then I don't know that I have a password. So let's try to RakeDB create and see if we can create the MySQL database.
All right,
Of course,
great.
we could not create it. Access denied for user. Maybe
That's
it's
because our
user.
database YAML.
Yeah, we just don't have the correct options here set up. User pass. Hostname, DB name, DB and sock will be deprecated at some point. Username, password, host, port, database. Host, localhost. I'm going to grab like the I wonder I don't even know if I have MySQL running on here.
Yeah, you might not. Do you have Postgres running on your machine?
I think so. This isn't mine. It's our office
Oh,
computer.
okay.
Do. Connection succeeded. What? There wasn't even a username.
That's
No
weird.
username. Huh. Okay. We have configured MySQL now for Timekeeper. We ditched SQLite because it doesn't really support much of this like date manipulation. It has far less features than MySQL or Postgres, so you can run into some things like that occasionally. And now we should be able to run the code that we just wrote to pull out the day of the week for the clocked in column and then check to see if it's within this range of 2 through 6. So let's see. And it did. So that's
Yep.
really cool. Although we don't have any results, so we should make sure that we put one in. July 1st should be one, right?
Yeah, because today's a Wednesday, so it should
And
be in there.
we had July 1st. So that's interesting.
I think we're on the right track, though.
Yeah, so if we are to, I think we can just test this in like SQL Pro in the terminal, so we can connect to our database with this tool, and it just helps to like write queries in here real quick and see the output. So if we set the date here to the 1st of July and we run that, we should get 4 back, and we did, but our query didn't actually give us the correct output. So this first record for sure in our database for clocked in is starting on July 1st. That definitely should work. I'm curious because we have like, in this case, we don't have these just strings. We have like a clocked in column. So maybe there's some difference there. I'm not quite sure.
Right.
Yeah. Because this doesn't look like I connected to the right database.
Nope. It looks like you hit MySQL's.
I'm anonymous at 127001. And I didn't put any username in for the database YAML, and it connected, and it worked.
That's pretty weird.
Yeah. RakeDB console, though, should let us jump into the... Oh, did they take that away? I think RakeDB console used to, like, drop you into, the database
Yeah, it
prompt,
did.
right?
It could be deprecated, but that's a shame if it is.
Yeah, that was a really useful feature.
Oops.
Maybe they
Thanks.
changed... They may have
Maybe.
just changed it, but...
Yeah, I'm honestly not sure what it's called. I usually, if I have to get in the console, I usually just hit PSQL or MySQL and
yeah.
go in raw. But
Yeah, and I
yeah,
don't... Um... Yeah, and I don't quite know what my setup is. This is weird, so...
no problem.
Well, maybe we'll try Postgres. I know I have an app running on Postgres, so let's try that. Oh, databases.
And while Chris is doing this, that's one thing I want to touch on is all of you guys out there that are learning full stack development. Remember there's a lot to it besides just writing code. So I mean, the more you can get in touch with infrastructure, and when I mean infrastructure, I'm talking about the server side, like Nginx and Apache and Puma and Passenger, and the database side, Postgres or MySQL. Like the more you can actually learn about this and understand it, it's going to help you actually write better code, because there's going to be like a cohesive like knowledge transfer between the two modalities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a really important thing to do. Shoot.
And also, if you look in the marketplace now, what I'm finding, like in my job search, is they want Rails people, but they also want you to know infrastructure and DevOps. So I mean, those I think probably in the next 5 years, like the term full stack developer will be synonymous with like DevOps and ops engineer. So you'll basically have to know both to make it.
I don't even know how Postgres is set up on here. Shoot. Postgres isn't even running. What?
Yeah, on OS 10, sometimes
Yeah,
you got to do the launch
whoever.
control.
Yeah, but whoever the hell set up this machine, because we have like 15 accounts on here, and Homebrew doesn't normally play with multiple accounts.
No, it doesn't.
Postgres dash D. Postgres. There we go. So now we've got Postgres set up. We went with MySQL originally, and my machine wasn't set up for it. I have Postgres set up. And we wrote this code actually for MySQL, and we use the day of week method that should pull out the day of the week as an integer between 1 and 7. But Postgres actually has a different format here, so we're going to have to look that up. So day of week Postgres is what we're going to search for, and this should help us figure out how to extract the day of the week from there. So day of week, DOW. So this actually uses the regular extract syntax, so you can extract DOW from some column in the database, and it will give you a 0 through 6. So we need to adjust our code to be extract DOW from clocked in, and then here we want this to be 1 through 5 because the actual range is 0 through 6 in Postgres. And now if we run Rails console and do event.businessdays and cross our fingers, this should work. And it didn't complain, but we definitely didn't still get the correct output because we should, for that
We should have pulled,
first...
yeah, for 7-1 or for today, we should have pulled one record.
Right. But I'm going to close SQL Pro here, and I have an app here to connect to the database, and we can go to localhost. Actually, I'm going to try this one, and we'll go out to this other database, Timekeeper Dev. And somewhere in here, I believe there's a way to view or like execute commands.
Hey, Chris, what app is this? Is it
It's called
Postico?
Postico. Yep. The guy that made PG Commander was trying to like copy SQL Pro and did a pretty good job, and then he abandoned PG Commander and rewrote it as Postico now.
Cool.
Not quite sure what his goal was with that. Oh, this is why we have no results, because we changed databases and have no records in the database.
Whoops.
So we need to restart our Rails server and make some records because we'll always get no results. And that's debugging for you.
Yeah. We created our own bug, so that's funny.
Yeah, I think that happens pretty often. You know, like you'll be like really focused on some problem, and then you'll like have one of those moments where you're like, oh shoot, like it's so obvious, but I should have known.
Yeah, and the problem with that is, at least I don't know about for you, but for me, like sometimes the time between the problem arriving and me having the light bulb turn on can be like an hour or 2 hours. So it can get frustrating.
Yeah, it's definitely frustrating, and that's kind of one of those moments where it's like just kind of like diving at the problem from a different angle can make such a difference. Like if I didn't open this database browser and click on the events table, I probably would have been debugging this for the next 15 minutes, just trying to figure out what is going on. So now we can see those, and when we run the query, it generates the correct query and the correct results. So we can actually put one of these dates in on the weekend, and that would be like, let's do July 4th. And if
Hey, Chris, you know what I was going to do? Before we did that, can we go back to the console and see if we can chain it? So doing like current month dot business days, will that work?
Right, we could definitely do that. So we can do current month, which should still work, and it does, dot business days. And that just adds the and clause in here, and then tax on that. And actually, this is fantastic because you have, like, here's every event in the current month, and then within those, let's pull out the ones that are only on business days. And, like, that's how you build up these queries to be, like, really efficient and flexible like that.
Yeah, because if we did it my way, the query would have been select from, bam, 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 and it would have been a mess. So
and it's easy, you know, to kind of hit that too, where it's like you're like working through the problem, and really you need to like pull out some very generic, like abstract kind of thing, but it's like not easy to do all the time. So I just added one in for July 4th, and sometimes it's easy to do like counts here so that you can see how many results you get. So like before we had just 2 events for the business days. And so we've got let's see. We have do we have two on the so we already had one on the weekend. So we had event 1 um on a business day, and we had event 2 on a or event 3 on a business day. Event 2 was not a business day, and it didn't show up this first query. So now we have 2 events on business days and 2 events not on business days, which is
Right.
pretty cool. So August 1st is on a Saturday. So that's why that didn't show up in that first query, which is actually pretty sweet. So, yeah, like now you have like, and if we get rid of these old comments, because we've now used the extract as we were initially going to talk about, you actually have this wonderfully like clean set of things. And I'm going to start and keep these like consistent between them.
Yeah.
Um, and they're a little longer, but that's not a bad thing because you actually are doing a lot. Like the query for what is in the current month is it's quite a big calculation. Like if you were to do that manually without these beginning of month helpers, it would be a lot of work. It'd be like kind of hard actually. Um,
Right.
so this is like really cool that we got it down to this. Obviously, like you can probably even shorten it. You can maybe just compress them because if you're like, okay, well I know it works, like we might as well just like smash them into one line each. Like that's okay. Like I don't mind having long lines of code once you've like um,
Got the
written it
method
out
down.
like cleanly, and then you're like, well, we probably don't ever have to change these again, so we should just like leave them, and we should and it's okay to like smash them together at that point if they're like pretty solid.
Right. Yeah. But I think like I mean I don't know about you, but like I like readability. I like my code to be legible. So like doing it this way, and one,
It's like,
it's more readable, and plus we also dried it up a little bit, which is nice.
yeah, and I feel like readability is a thing that like it's hard to define because like this is good right now if that's the only thing in our class, but if you like have a bunch of other methods in here and we like just paste in all this like duplicates of whatever, like you're gonna be like, dang, this is like a lot of stuff now, and you're not gonna want to read all of these. So like when it's just these 4, I'm not too like I feel like this is wonderful to look at. But if you were to like double or triple the methods in here or something, then I'd start to be like, I really don't need these to take up so much room. Um,
Right.
and that would be that one of those moments where I'd like smash them together and then just kind of keep them in this little chunk for scopes. Because usually you write the scope the first time, and assuming there's like no bugs that you run into and they're pretty straightforward, like you probably never need to touch them again. And uh, and then like I really don't need to make them like super readable at that point. But yeah, uh, it turned out
Cool.
good. Turned out really
Yeah.
good.
I had a question, and I already know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask you, and you can explain to the audience. Um, in scopes, I mean, you can write a regular scope without a lambda. Let's talk a little bit about lambdas and why they're important.
Actually, I believe in Rails 4 you can't write scopes without lambdas or
Okay.
something. Like they don't. Basically the gotcha is that if you were to run time.zone.now outside of a lambda, it would run when Rails loads. And so this start variable would get set to the time when you restarted your Rails app. And that would
Uh,
be permanently locked into that month forever. And the reason why lambdas are important, or blocks in general, is that this code will run only when you call
call.
current month. So the lambda is super crucial for basically that one purpose. And it was such a big gotcha that they decided to make it a requirement to write scopes, so that by default you always do the right thing. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
I
it makes a
actually
lot of sense.
yeah, I actually maintain a couple Rails 3.2 apps, and I ran into that problem where the object is actually locked at the start of the server. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I did quickly convert to lambdas for pretty much all of my scopes, and now my Rails 4 stuff. I think you're right. In Rails 4, it was it was almost like a deprecated option
Yeah, I
um,
think
to
so.
not use lambdas. But yeah, lambdas rock. But a lot of people don't understand lambdas, and what they do. But I think that's a decent explanation. That makes sense
Yeah,
to me.
it's basically just this like chunk of code that doesn't run when the Rails app loads. Like when this Rails app starts up, it loads up this class, and like the scope method runs. Like this actually runs as soon as the app requires this class. And you don't actually see any output. Nothing like really happens when that runs, but like it gives this event class the current method or the current month method, and it gives it the business days method. Like these scopes define methods when the Rails app runs so that you can call these things. And then this is just saved for later so that it can be executed later. And that way you don't make any mistakes with your times like that. Um,
So I guess in layman's terms, like having a lambda prevents us from setting state.
yeah, it's like just being lazy about when the code gets run. So yeah, it saves the calculation to happen when it's needed, which is another thing that Active Record does a lot, where it's like until you actually run the query or do something with it, it doesn't actually uh, it like won't do all the work until you actually need it, which saves a lot of time and performance in Rails.
Awesome. Well, I think we've kind of come to the end of our road for this session. So let's recap what we did. We started off with some specs for current month, current week, payroll week, and business days. And we initially wrote some scopes that were not as pretty as they could be. And then with Chris's help, we refactored what was in my head and got something clean, and it's rocking.
Yeah, it actually turned out super duper nice. Like
Yeah.
these are something that like these like scopes can probably be used in tons and tons of different like applications, and like this almost makes perfect sense to pull out into a concern, but it actually
Right.
makes even more sense, like you were
Gem.
saying with your gem, to like make it global for everybody to use. Like these scopes are really helpful. So yeah, it's like perfect to pull out into your gem, which is
Cool.
awesome.
Awesome. Well, I think that's about it for today. My brain is a little bit tired. I don't know about yours, but
Yep, me too.
um, yeah. So cool. Well, it was good doing this session with you, and like hopefully we can do another one.
Definitely. We'll
As you,
have to have you leave a comment or like this video. So if you like this one, like let us know so we can plan to do more of these in the future.
yeah, and Chris and I have been working together off and on for years, so and
Hmm.
we pair up pretty well. So yeah, I have some ideas, he has some ideas, and we just want to get feedback from you, the audience, as to whether or not there's any value to this. So if you guys like it, put a bunch
Let
of
us
thumbs
know.
up. Yeah,
Exactly.
definitely. Cool. So I'm signing off. I'm James from shakycode.com.
Cool. And I'm Chris from Go Rails, and that's it.
And all right, guys, peace.
Peace.